So we're all in agreement here that the left hates Donald Trump. We're good here. No need to articulate how. But why? Why do they hate him so much? They used to love him. Why do they hate him so much now? They'll never forgive him for beating Hillary in 2016. He stopped history from happening. The coronation of Hillary Clinton from First Lady to President of the United States, they denied them the first female president. Donald Trump denied them. Now, that's bad enough, but that is not Trump's legacy to these people on the left. Beating Hillary was enough to make them vow to destroy him and take down the whole country in the process. Right? After he beat Hillary, they decided right then and there to be for everything he was against and against everything he was for. You look no further than COVID to see that in action and the lengths that the left was willing to go to take down Trump. They would destroy the country in the process, not even feel bad about him. But still, that's not their legacy of Donald Trump beating Hillary. What still haunts their dreams every day is not just beating Hillary, it is putting 3 conservatives on the Supreme Court. Oh, I would have loved to have been at that lunch. What lunch? Back in 2013, President Obama had a nice little lunch with a one Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was 80 at the time, and the objective of the lunch was to try to convince the oldest member of the Supreme Court and 2-time cancer patient to say, hey, Ruth, maybe it's time you step down from the court so that I and the Democrats can put someone else in to continue your legacy. I don't know how that went down at the lunch, but it didn't work. And it wasn't just Obama. Many other Democrats tried to get her to resign just the same. Saying, hey, Ruth, we might lose the Senate. We may not be able to put in another feminist icon like you. You got to go now so we can continue your legacy. But she didn't do it. She refused to leave. I don't know why. We'll never know why. Maybe it's because she thought Hillary was going to win. At least that's what the Democrats said to themselves. Like, well, listen, we'd prefer you to resign now while we control the Senate. But okay, Hillary will win in 2016, and we'll have one feminist icon replace the old feminist icon with another future feminist icon, and all will be well in the progressive utopian world. But then, Orange Man entered the scene and not only denied Hillary history, but was able to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg with Neil Gorsuch. Not who they had in mind. And then put in Brett Kavanaugh. And then, worst of all, the opposite of feminist icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Amy Coney Barrett, a woman with 7 children. Do you remember when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died? And maybe even still today, if you go to like a Barnes & Noble, you go to a big national bookstore, the entire kids section was Ruth Bader Ginsburg books. All books about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG. I don't know if there's any kids' books about Amy Coney Barrett. And real quick, because I mentioned Kavanaugh, I'll never forget. We should almost do a special on this just to relive this. The hysteria. It was the greatest freak out I've ever seen. The greatest political freak out ever was when Donald Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh. Never forget the absolute gong show freak out that happened with that. And only Trump could have weathered that storm on behalf of Kavanaugh. Go back to 2016 as well. There were a lot of Republicans who were skeptical of Trump, didn't know about this guy. But in the end, they decided to hold their nose and vote for Trump because of the Supreme Court. That was the justification they gave themselves, the permission they gave themselves to vote for Trump and keep Hillary out, was because we got to make sure we keep justices on the Supreme Court. We put conservative justices on the court. And that worked out well. I remember that being a major talking point back in 2016. And I think it needs to be talked about again. No one's talking about the Supreme Court anymore, the next 4 years of it. But Clarence Thomas is 76. Sam Alito's 74. The others are late 60s, and then the newer ones are in their 50s. But you never know. 2 of our best conservative justices are in their 70s. We've got to make sure we put another conservative in there. I think that's a great reason to keep Kamala out of the White House, to make sure a Kamala appointment never hits the court. So I think that same justification that a lot of people used in 2016 to vote for Trump should be used again in 2024, but I don't hear anyone saying that. Now, if it's up to the Democrats, they're not going to leave it up to chance anymore. They're not going to leave it up to the president anymore. They want to entirely change the court in total. They're not going to wait and make sure that there's a Democratic president anymore. So they've come up with other ways to pack the court or unpack the court. We'll talk about all those different methods that they're testing, that they're trying, and that they will do if they get the opportunity to do it. They want to pack the court, take the court from 9 to 13 members or even more. They also want to unpack the court. They do that by making up phony ethics problems to try and force justices to recuse themselves, specifically Clarence Thomas. The scandals couldn't be more ridiculous. I'll just give you one of them. We got this headline here that Clarence Thomas received a Super Bowl ring from Jerry Jones. Now, there's no case that Jerry Jones has in front of the court, so I don't even know why it would result in a recusal anyway, but it was just a gift. But they made this big deal. Oh, the diamond Super Bowl ring, it's worth $80,000. Oh, it's unbelievable. And that went on for a long time before people kind of finally came around and said, well, hold on. It wasn't a real Super Bowl ring. It turned out to be a replica ring. It's not worth $80,000. It's worth something like $50. But whatever. They'll just lie. Do you remember Sam Alito's wife put the appeal to heaven flag outside the front of their property? Heaven forbid. The flag that George Washington used in the Continental Army. Appeal to heaven from John Locke's second treatise of government. He must recuse himself. So today's special, we're going to go over Kamala's proposal to pack the court to their favor, of course. They also want term limits. Now, that's an interesting one. Are term limits a good idea? Now, it's interesting, and we'll talk about that because I've never heard that idea before. Of all their proposals, they never talk about why it's a good idea. They never say, oh, well, we need term limits because. They don't say that. It's just assumed. Their followers know. It's because Trump is Hitler. And the court, as it currently is a major roadblock for them. It's a roadblock for them, killing babies and other bad things. So I'm curious, why did the founders make the court the way it is? Why did they make it a lifetime appointment, for instance? Why did they not? I'm sure they talked about it. So why didn't they do it that way? So we'll go over all that today. For the record, here's what Neil Gorsuch said about these so-called reforms.
It is that the independent judiciary means, what does it mean to you as an American? It means that when you're unpopular, you can get a fair hearing under the law and under the Constitution. If you're in the majority, you don't need judges and juries to hear you and protect your rights. You're popular. It's there for the moments when the spotlight's on you, when the government's coming after you. And don't you want a ferociously independent judge and a jury of your peers to make those decisions? Isn't that your right as an American? And so I just say, be careful.
That's the man who replaced Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's the reason why they hate Trump so much. These Democrats, these progressives, do not believe in the Constitution, not a word of it. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech. Here's Tim Walz on that topic.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Yeah, that's what you're up against.